Hello, our friends, Evolutionary Energy Arts family.
Hi there.
So, guys, I was reading comments and it really hit me because there was like a comment that was talking about, a real Christian wouldn't do this or would do that. And it got me thinking, and I said to Cindy, I said, yeah, well, how many people really follow Christianity, or how many people are really what I would call Constantinians? Because the fact is, most people, they unfortunately don't understand where what they believe comes from. They really don't. It's just like if you're only following CNN or MSNBC or even Fox News, you're still only getting what they want you to get.
Yep, you're getting these little one-liners that they want you to remember to burn into your psyche and have you have complete faith over something with actually very little understanding.
You know, Christianity has its roots way back, in like around 30 AD is what we're led to believe. Yeshua, and again, Yeshua would be what he would have been called in Judea, in Palestine. That would have been his Hebrew name, a shortened version of his Hebrew name. So we know, everybody knows the teacher, the Christ, as Jesus, but Jesus is not even really his name. Nobody called him Jesus at the time he was alive. There was not a single person that said, "Hey, Jesus, come over here. We need to change this water into wine." No, they would have said Yeshua or Yehovasha. There's things that get twisted and changed over time to skew our perception of things.
And, lead us very much astray into a belief system that was formed by other entities that just want to control.
It's a power structure. And, it's a powerful power structure, as this is the world's biggest religion. And there's about 2.6 billion Christians, quote unquote, in the world, of which roughly half, are Catholic, still following the faith of Constantine. But recognize that even if you're Protestant or even Eastern Orthodox, you're still basically only looking at a tiny portion of the scriptures that are out there, because everything that didn't agree with the official position was gathered up and burned and destroyed. And over time, the official position became the only position, because you would be called a heretic and you would be put to death if you did not believe what you were told to believe. Talk about freedom of speech, and, the First Amendment. They didn't have a First Amendment. Not at all. You were not free to even choose your beliefs. Your beliefs were forced on you.
Exactly. That's exactly true. And it's just this thing that they've been doing for so long, where I feel, if there was a disclaimer, like a disclaimer in the Bible saying, this is how this was put together, a lot more people would sit back and go, I don't know what I think about this. Should I look at other things? I think if people felt that they had permission to look outside the Bible, without having any major issues like burning in hell, they would explore more things. But the way things are set up, we're just locked into this little box, and it makes me sad.
Yeah, so you have 1.3 billion Catholics. And you got to recognize, too, that Catholics, they didn't get a copy of the Bible to understand what was being said or anything, because the services were done in Latin. And as a young boy, I was used to the Latin services. And when they started to change them over, it's like, there was always that debate in the family. Oh, I like the old ways better. I like the Latin, even though I don't understand a damn thing they're saying. Well, we didn't have any Bibles printed for us and out to the masses, until the King James in 1611. But even so, there were over 200 different Gospels, and we got 4. So really, when somebody says, well, this is not what I think a Christian is, really, in most cases, unless there's somebody that really has done some studying and really looked into other sources besides the Bible, you're really a Constantinian. You're following the teachings of Constantine. Now, who was at first a pagan emperor, and then, had a vision and basically became Christian. But again, he gave us an official version by putting together different councils, starting in 325 AD with the Council of Nicaea. There's 66 books in the Bible. There's 66 books. There were hundreds, if not thousands, of different texts that were quoted by people on a regular basis that were all professing to be Christians. And they didn't agree. They didn't agree on a lot of things, major things. Most people, unfortunately, don't have a clue about the history of how things really came together. So you have 66 books in the Bible, the current Bible. And this is an actual picture here of Papyrus 66, interesting numerology here, which is the oldest one that we have that is a full copy of the Gospel of John. And, the thing about this is there's corrections. So, I've had friends way back telling me, the Bible is the inerrant word of God. Everything is absolutely perfect. There's no inconsistencies. Well, how come there's like 2,000 or 3,000 revisions in this oldest copy that we have? There's minor edits and there's major edits going on with this. Most people don't realize the scriptures we have been edited. They've been censored. These things are redacted, like what the FBI and the CIA give us.
Exactly. And this is one of the reasons why I started getting curious to look outside the Bible, because things just didn't make any sense. It's like they were only telling one line of a giant, huge story, and they just are telling you this one little teeny tiny snapshot, and that's all you get.
And, people differ on how old they think this is, but they think this is somewhere around 250 to 300 AD. So, this is probably, again, 220, 230, 270 years after Christ and his mission. This is way later. This is not, we're given the illusion that, like the Gospel of Mark and Matthew are old, and they probably came by, maybe 20 years after Jesus or, Yeshua was on the planet. But we don't have copies of that. This is the oldest we have right here. And these are hundreds of years later. And why is the Gospel of Thomas not in the Bible when, sources say and experts say this was probably from about 170 to 180? So this is even closer, but it's Gnostic, quote unquote, Gnostic. And so, this is one of the quote unquote heresies that was thrown out. And at first thrown out, get rid of all the copies. Nobody needs to see this anymore. We know how redaction works. We know how politics work. This is politics. This is, again, a Roman emperor. And this is all about consolidating his throne. And as I've said many, many times, when he was worried about his wife and son potentially trying to usurp him, he killed him. He actually threw her in boiling oil. This is not a saint. He's actually made a saint. This is a guy that slaughtered thousands of people, conquered, so many different tribes throughout Europe and elsewhere as well. So many different people conquered. And again, there's a reason why this isn't in here. And also, we've talked about that before with Gnosticism. It's very much in line with a lot of the Eastern philosophies about going within. You don't need any church. Well, you can't have that. So, we're all very familiar with this. I tell you now, do not resist an evildoer, but whoever slaps you on your right cheek, turn him also the other. That's not this guy. This is an emperor who lived and died by the sword and put people under the sword, executed countless peoples, who was brought up again a pagan, quote unquote, became a Christian, so now he's saving souls. That's all he's really interested in, is saving souls. No, he's interested in the gold. He's interested in the resources. He's interested in the taxation.
And I really love having you here to explain these things in detail and really outlining how this was put together, because you're so well read and you know all of these things, and people need to see this like in a nutshell, I think, before they feel really comfortable looking at other writings.
This is a painting, a depiction of Constantine right here. And, he had a vision. He saw that he was supposed to conquer under the sign of the cross. So they adopted the cross. And he went conquering. And that is so Antichrist. So as I have said before, the end times deception is everything that we have in the mainstream. Everything. We now, most of us, we don't trust anything that comes from any sort of mainstream news. This is the mainstream news. The official version is given to us by these powers that be. The Council of Nicaea in 325 appointed Jesus Christ as man's true savior and created Christianity. They did create this version. That doesn't mean that that Yeshua was not an amazing teacher that was sent here on a mission to literally to save our souls, in the sense that to pull us out of the muck and the mire, out of the system, to let us know what it could be instead of what it is. So everything was debated. Everything was debated because people didn't agree on anything. How about the eternal deity of Christ? That was something they talked about in 325 at Nicaea. And so you can see them, they're breaking it out into bad guy and good guy, with basically, who actually did end up being accepted as the doctrine, because they didn't agree. The fact that Christ was quote unquote God was debated. Not everybody thought so. As you see, Arius said Christ is a created being. And then you have Athanasius saying, nope, Christ is God. And so the outcome was, the eternal deity of Christ affirmed in the Nicene Creed, which I had to, state time and time again every time we went to church, because it was mind washing, it was brainwashing, indoctrination. And you see in Constantinople in 381, the issue was the person of Christ. And here you have Apollinarius saying Christ is divine logos, but not human spirit. And again, people didn't agree on all these things. And they were, eventually you get to the Trinity being affirmed, and, other things that we can't explain. Well, they're just divine mysteries. You got to just trust us on this one.
Yes, exactly. Just have blind faith, don't ask any questions. And over time, and I think more and more people now are finally asking questions.
So you see, it took them 126 years to get to where, they were unified and finally had decided what's going to work best for them. So, this is kind of harsh, but it has a lot of truth there. How you got your Bible, and the Constantine and his bishops voted on a bunch of different books, and they said, this is the Word of God. That's what they came out with, and they pick and chose what they wanted, and they burned everything else, in 391 AD. And so then they also put prohibition against any other religions out there. You had to convert. Otherwise, you would be the barbecue.
Right. And I think these are the little not so minor details that people don't actually realize and know and understand.
So, when Peter took up the sword to go and fight for Christ, he said, put down your sword, and we talked about turning the other cheek. That's not stuff that this guy would do. And this is the guy that gave you your version. And people will say, well, that's just the Catholic Church. Well, the Bible that everybody uses comes out of that, that original church. So, you're not looking at the other, and the Catholic book has some apocryphal texts, which the Protestant one doesn't. But you're not, the Protestant, for the mainline Protestant denominations, they don't go and quote, from what we got the Nag Hammadi, they don't quote from all the Gnostic texts and other texts as well. They're only quoting from these ones that were chosen in 325 AD. So even though you might disagree on some dogma, and you don't recognize the Catholic Church as the authority of Christ or God on earth, you're still following the books that they told you to follow. And you still have all these redactions and these edits going on.
Right. And it's just people are so afraid to step out of their belief system because of what they've been threatened with. But I really want to encourage people to sit on this information. If you're struggling about belief systems and you're afraid to step out of your comfort zone, just think about this video, and we're going to be doing more of them too.
Yeah, we'll go in depth, real in depth, and we'll start picking apart some of the Gnostic texts as well, and getting into different beliefs. And I just ordered a bunch of Essene books to get into as well. It's hard to find a lot of this stuff because it's been wiped out on purpose. It's been kept from us. So do we really know the teachings, the true teachings of Yeshua? You know, there have been those like Dolores Cannon and Edgar Casey that have given us some teachings that are very, very, quote unquote, Unitarian in their message. Again, not divisionary at all. You know, not about dogma, because dogma is man-made. You know, and the real teachings of Christ were about self-empowerment and knowing that God lies within each and every one of us. Meanwhile, the Constantinian philosophy is one of power, rules, power, control, and censorship. Yeah. You cannot disagree, or you would have been put to death, and many were. And, you know, it's all about conquering, and that's what we see. And so, you know, it's interesting to look at the history of it, too, because, you know, he had to basically put down his adversaries and take total control. And then he set off on these quests and extended out the empire and killing tons of people, slaughtering people as he went. He was no Christian, you know, and for sure, if you want to talk about end times deception and antichrist, this guy was an antichrist.
Oh my goodness, yes. And what's really, I think, important to note is that people look at the good parts of the Bible. They want to be part of something good. They want to be part of something bigger than themselves. But these really harsh truths keep getting pushed back into a corner, and you can't do that. You have to bring it all together so you can ask yourself fair questions.
So what really is a Christian? You know, that's the question. And how do you know? I mean, if you just look at the teachings, well, it's certainly not war and conquest. But think about how we're programmed to think that it's a very Christian thing to perhaps, you know, join the service, go support your country, you know, and in reality, what you're doing is, you know, making the bankers richer, as we know. And that's not Christian, because Christ never talked about conquering. And, you know, he was all about self-empowerment, because when did he ever say, "You're welcome, I healed you"? He never said, "You're welcome, I healed you." No, he said, "Your faith healed you." He also said, "Why you marvel at all the things I'm doing, you know, healing people and doing all these miracles, because you're going to do greater." Well, if the doctrine that they came up with is real, how could we possibly do anything greater than God? Unless God's within all of us.
Right. And a lot of people, you know, are worried about certain abilities. And if you have these abilities, well, you must be, you know, working with the devil. Yet look at all these things that Christ was able to do. And that was Christ.
So we have some of the crimes and atrocities of the popes, which is enough to make your mouth gape. St. Leo the Great. Yeah, that's Pope Leo. He actually came out and said this myth of Christ has served us well. He actually came out and made that statement publicly. He applauded massacres. This is a nice guy. I mean, there's so many of these popes that did things that are so anti-Christ, anti-Christian, and yet they were the holy, quote-unquote, representative of Christ on earth. It's amazing when you look at everything that they've done throughout time. This is all about power. This is all about greed and control. This is about empires. And this is about keeping people under control.
Right. And really look at this information and think about it and ask yourself, what does this mean to you?
So here you have Pope Stephen VI brought the dead body of former Pope Formosus to trial, hacked off his decaying finger, and had him dragged through the streets of Rome and thrown into the Tiber River. Then you have another pope, Pope Sergius III, obtained his office by murder. He fathered several illegitimate children who assassinated Pope Leo VI and then put their own teenage son as the pope. You had Pope Damascus, many crimes. People who questioned any church doctrine had their land seized and their families sacrificed through being tortured and burnt alive. Former female priests and their children were used as sex slaves to provide income for the church. He was found guilty by 44 bishops of adultery, but used his position to obstruct justice, after which he murdered the bishops. So this is this Christianity? See, the problem is, for the most part, true Christianity has been lost. And we've been given a counterfeit. And this is not the teachings of the Christ, of the being known as Yeshua.
No, it's definitely not. And to ask yourself these questions, to help step outside of the box, it's really, really important. And it's a good time to do it. I mean, the Great Awakening is happening. It's time.
It is. You have Pope Urban II. Many different crimes against humanity. His worst was during 1096 to 1099. And I don't know, this seems like such a high number, but it says where approximately 10 million innocent men, women, and especially children were murdered and their property stolen under the legal approval of Pope Blessed Urban II. Wholesale slaughter of innocent people for nothing more than greed. It included Belgrade in 1096, the chief city of the Orthodox Church, after Constantinople, and Yugoslavia, Turkey, Syria, Antioch, and Palestine. This is this tradition. And, because perhaps you're in a Protestant church, you think that it doesn't affect the belief structure, but it does. Because, again, those 66 books are the same books. And the oldest copies, they're redacted, So the teachings have been distorted because it's control and divide. Control and divide. And, between the Catholic Bible and the King James, we don't have the pseudepigraphal texts in there. But otherwise, they're coming out of the same sources. And again, they destroyed everything that didn't agree with the official doctrine, hundreds of years after Christ walked the earth.
Right. And I do believe that there are some good things, that can be utilized out of the Bible. But, and I don't want to crush anyone's belief system, but I do want people to have the opportunity and the free will to feel and know that they can look at other systems.
Yeah, and get into the Nag Hammadi texts, which are as old, if not older, than anything else we have. So these books, check them out and see what you feel. If there's a little bit of a difference there, we do believe in the teachings of Christ, in those positive teachings about being heart-centered, giving, loving, doing for others, trying to lift others up. There's so many different things that are taken to be like divine mysteries, like John 14:12-14. Very truly I tell you, whoever believes in me will do the works I have been doing, and they will do even more things than these, because he's going to the Father, and I will do whatever you ask in my name, so that the Father may be glorified in the Son. And again, they'll take it to mean that, well, we got to do it in Jesus' name. Well, first, he wasn't ever Jesus. He was Yeshua. Jesus is the Latinized form of it again. And, so right there, that's something that's not even accurate. But yet, tap into his energy, because he is very real. And most definitely a benevolent being of love and light that wanted to spread everything good upon the planet and lift the dark veil that's been over it. But these powers that be grab a hold and they say, how can we keep the people divided? Well, we're going to make an official version, and we're going to terrify people and take their land from them and put them to death if they disagree.
Hmm. That's right. And it's definitely okay to look at other belief systems. I mean, that's what Mike and I do. We explore everything, everything. And what I like to do is take those little bits and pieces that resonate with my heart and then put it to work.
So again, I and my Father are one. They took up stones to stone him, right? Well, what does that mean? Well, it's clear if you studied any of the Eastern beliefs, Hinduism, and then we have Jainism and Buddhism come out of Hinduism, and Sikhism is kind of a merger between that with some of Islam's influence in it as well. It's self-realization. It's realizing, wait a minute, God's in me. I just have to get myself aligned with God's will. What's God's will? Well, it's pretty simple. It's not dogma. It's not, any sort of baptism in a specific way. It's not saying any sort of Nicene Creed, which is given to us again by an emperor, a Roman emperor at that. It's about holding love in your heart. That's what it's about. Love, compassion, unity. And this dark system has divided us. They've taken the message, they've made it be a divisive thing. And that's something that would make the real Yeshua very, very sad.
It really would. It truly does, actually. From what I've channeled, been able to have experiences with him and moments with him and feeling his energy and actually seeing his sadness about what has happened to his teachings, how they've been so sorely twisted and misused.
Would you share a little bit more on that?
Well, yeah, I mean, this was not the intent. He came here to free people, free them from, the chains of certain different belief systems. And his whole story was just put into a book and then utilized for it to be manipulated. And if you could imagine, how would that make you feel? If you came to try to free a lot of people and then your work was taken and twisted and manipulated. I think he's been very kind and loving and patient, sitting back and waiting for this belief to get cracked open and the truth of his teachings to be put forth. And I feel he knows now is the time it's happening, and that does warm his heart.
Yeah, I mean, as it's said, also all are welcome at my Father's table. So it's not just one denomination, because the truth is, it's not dogma. It's about your vibration. Everything is energy. Everything is frequency. Are you living out of a vibration that is one of division, that is one of ego even? Putting one group above others is not something he would do, and he wouldn't put down others and say to, them anything negative to get them feeling, that they were less than. He was trying to build up and not break things. The only breaking apart was breaking of the dark structure, the power structure upon the earth.
Right, and it is very difficult because his true teachings, since they were twisted, you have to rely on other ways to learn about him and actually feel his energy and understand his heart and know how big it is and how much he does have such a huge loving capacity for mankind. And right now, I feel his energy. He's so excited that we're going to go into this and we're going to break open some belief systems and show people the parallels and let them know that, hey, it's okay to follow a different system. What works for you? What works for your heart?
Most definitely. And we did have somebody else that said, do you actually see, like, when these beings come to us, when you are either channeling or when they come, like, last night again, we have a regular visit by a certain angel that works under Gabriel, and I think a couple times, 2-3 times a week, it comes by, because it's really, it appears like a he, but of course, they're not engendered, but it does its work, and it helps with our energy bodies. And then almost always, then we're visited by Lakshmi's energy, and Lakshmi is a deva from the Hindu pantheon. But, again, that's the human perspective on it, because, these beings are not limited by human words. Any sort of human label is just too limiting for these beings, because they're benevolent and they work together. They work together. You had said last night when we were talking, it's almost like, you're working at a job, and, there'll be times when you're going to have to hand something off and say, well, this is not my expertise. You might handle this better.
Well, in the guiding of humanity, right, that's not a problem for them to do. And I think people need to know that they can ask for more guidance. If you're not getting information from one source, ask another source, and that gives your guides and your angels the ability to open more doors for you. It's about you being open and exploring. And yes, absolutely, when I do channel Yeshua, I don't know why, I always see him off to my left though. But yeah, that definitely is such a beautiful being, and he does put himself, to me, he shows himself to be the size of a man, because I think what he doesn't want to do is he doesn't want to intimidate, but his soul is gigantic.
Yeah, and very benevolent. So you have the angelic realm, which is much bigger than we can comprehend as well. And, these beings like the devas, they're benevolent too. There was an old thing that they used to do back in the day, and this is even mentioned in the Bible, of how often the people that you're at war with, the other tribes that you're fighting with, the gods of your enemy are your demons. And this is what they've continued to do. So, and it's so sad, because these beings are not demonic. They are not evil. They are not, negative beings in any way, just because they come out of somebody else's belief structure. Because again, when you get down to it, that's all still a human concept. Their energy, their consciousness, and they're way beyond our ability to comprehend exactly what they are right now with these brains. So, we could kind of label them. We could try to describe what they feel like and all. And you will know them by their energy. It's so clear. In these, because you'll have people that are so indoctrinated that they will think that it's all Satan coming as an angel of light, masquerading as an angel of light. Well, that's all about what he gave us. That is what this is, the system. So, if you're still in the system and you're still indoctrinated in that system, then that's the big deception. Because the beings of light, the angelic beings, these what we would call ascended masters, the rishis, they're benevolent. They're not working against each other. They don't care anything about dogma. They're way beyond dogma. They're just working for love and light and peace and harmony.
And that's just so beautiful that, almost makes me want to cry to think that these beings do come to us, and I get to read their energy. I get to see them and express what I experience with that unconditional, stable, merciful love, where there are beings that will take you exactly as you are and love you anyway.
Yeah, and when you feel that, it's overwhelming. Cindy breaks down crying often, when the energies come by. She was crying this morning doing mantras. She was crying last night because of it. And it's just beautiful agape love, if you understand. It's just, it's so accepting, even with all of our limitations and understanding. It's totally accepting. It's not something that is hellfire, and that again, that could be a product of your mind. As Buddha said, the only hells are in the minds of those that believe in them. What you expect to happen, you might find happening, when you pass on, if that's what you truly believe. And you have so much guilt because maybe you were indoctrinated into a system and you thought that I'm going to be a good Christian. I'm going to go and serve in the military. And then you find yourself over in Iraq or Afghanistan or somewhere else, and nobody even knows that you're there, under the auspices of, the U.S. corporation, so to speak. And then asked to do things that really hurt your soul and your conscience. Well, that's creating hell. And that's creating hell for the individual that can last lifetimes. And this is what the Dark Ones understand. There is nothing militaristic about Christ. Nothing. It's love and compassion. Not, what we see with Constantine. So getting back to that original question, what really is a Christian? And, how many people are really following Christ's teachings and how many are following Constantine's?
And it's something that people should ask themselves, and that's okay. And whatever that looks like, that's what that looks like. But the most important thing is to free the soul.
Yes. And this is part of the light that has to be shed, because this world's not going to turn into any one religion. There is no one size fits all. Everybody is free and should be free, really should be free to do things the way you want to do them. If you have a little ritual and you're going to go jump in a circle, 5 times one way and 3 times the other, and then bow down to, Christ, Krishna, and Buddha, that's fine. Whatever you want to do. Anything. It doesn't matter. It's where your heart is. Everything else is really, it's so superficial.
It really is, and I think I'm just excited because I'm seeing the comments come in, and people do seem like they are ready to let themselves be free. So that's exciting to me.
Yes. So rise up above the end time deception, which is, again, the mainstream religious media that's out there. Again, I've talked about the riches of the Catholic Church, but how about the riches of these other people out there? I mean, look at some of the other ones out there that are so wealthy. We've seen fall from grace so many times in the past, your Jimmy Swaggarts as well. These mega churches that are taking in millions and millions and millions of dollars. Can you see Jesus leading, Yeshua leading a church like that? No, he doesn't need 10 BMWs. He doesn't need 3 Mercedes. He doesn't need, 10,000 square foot mansion. He would abhor that.
Oh my gosh, he so would. He would be, well, he is. He does. He still witnesses it, and it does sadden his heart, But the one thing that we can all see and keep going back to and hold on to is that his true teachings, they're starting to surface.
Yes. So guys, make sure you are subscribed. Thanks for your support on Ko-Fi and Patreon. Anybody that needs us, reach out to us at EEARTS@protonmail.com or evolutionaryenergyarts@gmail.com. As always, God bless and namaste.
Namaste.